Hi, I'm Claire Atherton, and this is episode 16 of Beating BDD, a podcast about body dysmorphic disorder from the BDD Foundation in the UK. For this episode, I spoke to Rebecca Foster, who suffered from BDD alongside issues with alcohol and food. It was only when she realised that BDD was driving the other issues that she was able to make real and inspiring progress. So, hi Rebecca, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
You're
Really nice
welcome.
to meet you face to face as well.
Yes.
Person's quite a rare pleasure these days. Just for the listeners, we're actually recording this kind of at the end of lockdown now in the UK, isn't it? So people are starting to come out a little bit more, which is lovely. But it made me wonder how that experience has been for you, being sort of shut indoors for 3 months with your BDD.
Lockdown for me had an incredible effect on my BDD in sort of good ways and bad ways. One of the things I liked it enabled me to hide. So it actually fed my BDD. Because I'm very good at saying I don't want to go out. I cancel plans. So for me, lockdown was a perfect opportunity for me to keep myself locked away. But the problem with that is being locked away, I was in a flat, there's mirrors, there is time and thoughts in my head. And the worst thing for me is being alone with my thoughts. And it was extremely difficult. I got very depressed. I got very anxious. And I have other issues, which we'll probably talk about later with drink, that actually caused me to have a relapse on drink because the BDD got so painful. It was the only way I could cope with how I was feeling.
Yeah, you said when we chatted before actually about how obviously you have had these wider issues well to deal with or other issues existing alongside your BDD, but that at one point you actually realised that the BDD was the thing that was underpinning the other issues rather than the other way around.
It's interesting because when I was 13, I began with bulimia, but I believe my body dysmorphia started then from school. I was bullied at school. I was very controlled. I was a very nervous child. But what happened was I picked up drinking, and I think the body dysmorphia got lost underneath the bulimia and the drinking because they were more prevalent. Obviously, BDD is now more known about, but I'm 36 now, so we're talking, sort of 25 years ago when I was at school. So the focus for me was always on those two things, not anything that was happening underneath. And also for anyone who has a drink problem, they would know when you're drinking, you can't find out what's going on underneath until you put the substance down. So it took a long time for me to actually realise the driving factor in all of this, which is the BDD, and today will remain my primary focus in my recovery. As much as I look at the other stuff, the BDD has to come first, because if that's not protected, it's sort of like a domino and it will just, everything else will fall down.
So where would you say you are now with your recovery?
Well, when people ask me, I tell them I'm in recovery from BDD. I don't believe I will ever be able to say I'm cured. I have good days and bad days. One thing I wanted to mention was obviously I had anxiety coming here because my head this morning told me that I would turn up, you would look at me, think I was ugly. You may even throw me out and say, you haven't got BDD, you're just ugly. And that's the power of the BDD monster, as I call it, in my head. That's what it does to me. But I came here anyway, as I said to you, because this is not just about me anymore. This is about helping other people and being able to sort of get more exposure on the illness. So I'm definitely in recovery. I'm having therapy. I've been having therapy for 4 months now, and it's brilliant. It's the best thing. We've gone right back. We've had to deal with childhood, school, like everything up and in between. And I can really see where it comes from. And I now accept that I have it. Occasionally my head will say, you don't have it, you're just ugly. And this is why I think people don't speak about it, because I used to think if I told you about it, you would say, well, you are ugly. And this is why I think people don't come forward about it, because they're frightened of pointing out their flaw. And the other difficulty is I've been to the doctor many times in the past and they've said to me, you're a beautiful young looking woman. What's wrong with you? And that then makes you think, what is wrong with me? I must be crazy. And because no one else can see it, when I would describe to my friends how I was feeling, I came across as vain. They didn't understand it. So I'm in recovery. It's a slow process and it's going to take time, but there's lots of things I'm doing to help myself now, and I'm willing to accept it. Yeah.
And you also said that when it was really bad, it felt like you were in a prison, but then it's, by the sounds of it, it's not feeling like that anymore. You're kind of going outside and doing the things that you want to do, even if it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's almost like, I said to someone once, it's like being in a prison, but the door is open.
Oh.
But you can't get, like, you have the key, but you can't get out because you don't have the tools to get out. You know, I would describe my life as imprisonment in my mind, because my mind dictated to me where I could go, what I could do, who I could see, who I couldn't see. So effectively, it was like I can only imagine it like a prison sentence, and just not knowing how to get out, and thinking that I never could get out, just thinking that this is it. I am ugly. I am deformed. I must hide myself away from the world because nobody wants to look at me, and I must remain in this prison, because it almost became a place of safety. Sometimes pain, which sounds strange, but actually being in there, I was safer because I was comfortable with the BDD. Now I'm growing. I'm a bit like, oh, I'm not quite sure who I am, because every day I'm experiencing new changes and things. And it's quite overwhelming. I get quite emotional sometimes because all these new experiences are happening. And at the age of 36, I'm experiencing things that perhaps people who don't have it have experienced. So it can be quite overwhelming sometimes.
Yeah, it sort of really challenges your sense of self, doesn't it? Your identity.
It really does, yeah.
It's like, if I'm not a BDD person, who am I?
Exactly. And I think for a long time it was my identity. And also when you let go of that identity, yeah, as you said, who am I? What am I? What do I like? And I'm again relearning all these things, because every hobby or anything I loved, I let go of. You know, at school I loved dancing, acting, reading, lots of things. And all those things were let go, because the only thing I could think about was how I looked. And that was it. I couldn't even watch TV, mostly because I'd be comparing myself to someone on the TV. But even trying to read, and these thoughts would keep coming in, and I'd think, God, just leave me alone. And it just wouldn't leave me.
How is that now? I mean, are you able to go back and do any of those things that you enjoyed when you were younger? Have you got to a point where you can?
Yes, I am.
Discover those hobbies?
One thing I'm very conscious of is that I don't watch programs with people who have had surgeries, those kind of things, because I also am in recovery from an eating disorder. So for me, it's very detrimental to watch these programs because they're not actually real people. People don't really look like that. So I'm very careful about that. I read a lot again, and I'm able to focus on the book. And I'm able to now also have conversations with friends. And for example, I can sit here and talk to you now and look at you, and it's not so prevalent in my mind. I can still feel it in the back, but I'm not like constantly thinking you're looking at me. Dancing is something I'm desperate to take up again, which is something I'm, definitely going to look at doing, because obviously physical exercise, anything like that, it is good for your mental health. So I feel like I'm the old Rebecca that was there at the beginning that got lost is slowly resurfacing. But it, as it's been explained to me, it takes time for that person to disappear. You don't just become ill over one day, and the same thing happens as you get better. But I can look back now and see big progress when I look back sort of 6 months, 1 year.
And you're also about to start an amazing sounding job in Italy as well. So, I mean, what can you tell us about that? And also, can you tell us how you feel about doing that compared to maybe 6 months ago? Would you have believed that you were even able to take a job like that 6 months ago?
No. So the sort of line of career I've done is I've always been sort of a nanny, private PA for private families. So I've kind of always prided myself on having a job. I've always managed to hold down work despite being so unwell, which I think does show that I have an amount of strength inside of me. And my family have always said this to me: you're incredibly strong. It's just you've got to channel it in the right way. I mean, when lockdown happened, I wanted to go, I was overseas last year working and I wanted to go back overseas, and lockdown happened. And again, I thought, well, I'm never going to get a job overseas. Nothing's going to open up. Again, that made me more depressed. And then all that comes out in my body. There's something wrong with you. It always comes back to you don't look okay. And then this interview came up for Milan, and they asked me to go out and meet them for 5 days. And they offered me the job within 24 hours. And they are a really lovely family, 2 lovely children. And I'm flying out to Milan on Monday to start a new life and, you know, a new job. And I haven't worked for 8 months due to being out of unemployment. And it's one thing for me is working helps my body dysmorphia because it gives me a focus. The thoughts will still come in, but then I'll think I need to do this or I need to make sure he's doing that. And especially working with children, I like to use my experience to focus on helping them. You know, for someone suffering with body dysmorphia, sitting in your room all day is the worst thing you can do. But I understand why you do that because I did that. And it's very hard to say to someone, come on, come for a walk, because you just don't want to.
Yeah,
you don't want to
get
go
those
out.
patterns, don't you, in other mental illnesses? So you get that with depression.
Depression,
it's exactly the same. So I think there's a growing understanding, I think, isn't there, of that?
It's hard, and I can see. You know, I remember people saying, you know, just come for a walk with me, and I think, but I don't want to. I don't want people to look at me, and they'd say, but you'll feel so much better. No, I won't. And it becomes then a habit. I don't want to do it. I'm not doing it. I don't want to go out. I remember at the beginning of lockdown, I used to try and take myself out for 10 minutes. And I got very anxious then. And I actually really felt like people were looking at me. And then that sort of started this paranoia that if I went out, people were going to look at me. I mean, people do look at each other. This is the thing. But when you have body dysmorphia, you really do believe they are looking at you because there's something wrong. Even today, on the way here, people have looked at me and the same thoughts are there. So I think what it shows to me is I can challenge those. I'm able to think, okay, they're looking at you, so what? You're looking at them. Let's go on to the next order of the day, whatever we need to do next.
Shall we go back then? I know you touched upon what the roots of your BDD were, but do you want to just go back and tell us your sort of experience in general in as much or as little detail as you like?
Yeah, so for me, I guess as a young child, I believe I had OCD, which again is BDD is on the spectrum, obviously with the intrusive thoughts. So I was particularly tidy. Things had to be facing the right way. My teddies had to be lined up. So I had those sort of traits. I was an anxious child. I developed a twitch because I was very anxious. So that began. And then really, when I started secondary school, I went from a tiny school of 100 to a school of 1,000, and I just wanted to fit in. And I never felt comfortable. And unfortunately, I fell in with a group of girls who we had a particular ringleader who was a bully. So when I say I was bullied at school, it wasn't in the way of people calling me names. It was actually done internally, which, again, I've learned can almost be worse because it was my friends bullying me and me laughing about the comments they were making. When I was at school, I was teased very badly for my nose, which was the biggest one, and then the colour of my skin. Now, I'm half Greek, although I was born and raised in Britain, but the school I went to everybody was white. We had one black person, I think, and one Asian. So I guess children will pick on anything that maybe looks a bit different. So I think when the name calling started, I would laugh it off. Yeah, ha, 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 I've got a big nose. Yes, I look like, you know, a Pakistani or something. But it actually really hurt me inside. And what that said to me was that there's something wrong with the way you look. And that's where that began. And the bulimia was extremely bad because I felt I was fat. And then the drinking would happen to try and sort of stop all of this. And then it really continued. I was first diagnosed when I was 24. Now, I actually took the diagnosis to the doctor because I read an article about it and I thought, I've got that. That is exactly what I am suffering from. And I went to the doctor, and luckily, because I'd been to doctors before, and they had not dismissed it, but just said, there's nothing wrong with you. And this doctor actually said, I think you're suffering from body dysmorphia. So I had the diagnosis at 24, but I still didn't choose to face it, to have any treatment. I spent years of my life just beating myself up for being ugly. I mean, I'm known for cancelling on friends. My friends are very understanding now that they understand, but I would, it'd be their birthday party. And if it was a day where I looked in the mirror and I couldn't go, I'd say, I can't go. And they'd say, why? And it came across as vanity, which BDD is not, but I can understand why people see it like that, because it's sort of like you're saying, I don't look good enough to come. It's all about me again. So that was very difficult. The first time I had therapy for it was in 2016, because I got to a point where I joined the BDD Foundation. I knew more about it. I had every intention of going to the groups. I used to go to the Priory. There's one on every third Sunday. So I'd been to that a few times. I'd never quite made it to the Marylebone one, because for some reason, 6 o'clock isn't a good time for me. The evening's always a bad time. I don't know what happens at that time, but I get my lower mood. So I'd been, so I knew there was something wrong. So I got referred. I had CBT specifically for BDD. So we did exposure therapy. But the problem was, so I saw her, I think, for 5 months. Now, half of that time I was sober and half I wasn't. And the half I was sober, we made progress. She actually showed me on a chart the difference between when I was drinking and when I wasn't, as to what she could get me to do. So that really showed me again that I was not going to be able to beat this. And then sadly what happened was my addiction got so bad I ended up having to go off to rehab and try and deal with that, and to really understand that, I had to get sober. I had to be sober because I can't go forward. The difficulty in rehab was they didn't understand BDD. So you're treated for one condition, but actually you have two. And I mean, they call it dual diagnosis. So if you have two conditions, you have to treat them both. And they would say things to me like, well, just don't look in the mirror, or take the mirror down, or for goodness sake, why aren't you at group? Why are you late? What have you been doing? And again, I got the whole thing, vanity, that kind of thing. So then that fueled the beating myself up even more. And then last year I was working and I decided, right, I'm going to go for it this time. So I found a therapist who was recommended through my rehab in South Africa, but she had a special interest in BDD. So we began working together last year. I made a lot of progress with her. And then unfortunately, a friend of mine passed away and I lost my job in 1 week. And now this caused me a horrific downfall. Again, I went back into drink. I, was holding knives up to myself. I wanted to kill myself and cut my skin. And I just felt awful. So, but it was still there. And then really the turning point, I guess, has been since February. I mean, between February and July, the difference in me, I mean, my therapist said this to me today, it's like I'm two different people. But she said that's because you have put the work in. So whatever she's asked me to do, I've done it. I've done every exposure she's asked me to do. I've gone to places I didn't want to go to, things in childhood I didn't want to talk about. Really painful, because therapy is not a nice experience. It's very painful. But I've done it. I mean, the other day I have a thing about I can't go out with greasy hair, because if I go out with greasy hair, people will think I'm dirty. And if they think I'm dirty, then I'm not perfect. And I cancelled on my friend. And then I phoned her up and I said, you know what? Will you come and meet me? And she said, okay, why? And I said, because I'm going to do an exposure. And she went, well, what are you going to do? I said, well, my hair's going to be greasy. And she went, so?
Yeah.
But do you see what I mean? But I went out, we had a coffee, nothing happened. Nobody threw a tomato at me because I had greasy hair. And I proved to myself that actually what you think people are thinking, they're actually not. And you have to keep telling yourself that. We all walk around in our own heads. We have our own lives to deal with. And I think that's sometimes what you forget, because I think it's like when I walk out into the street, it's like the Becca show, right? There's someone standing there with a clipboard analysing my bottom, my thighs, the shape of my hips. And that's not real. But that's what the BDD monster would tell me. And because you are unwell, you buy into it.
Did you ever hear about that? Such an interesting experiment, psychological experiment, where a group of people were told that people running the experiment had put marks on their faces, like sort of makeup to make them look like they had birthmarks. Right. But they hadn't done it. But they told them that they had.
Okay.
And then they sent them out and told them to report back on how they felt people responded to them in shops and at bus stops and things like that. And they all came back and said they responded completely differently to me. People were staring at me. It was nothing like my normal experience. But there was nothing on their face. But there was nothing there. And that just shows the power of that perception, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's crazy.
Your filter is saying everyone's looking at me because there's this wrong with me.
But it's not. But they're not. No.
So that was
fascinating.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
What else have you found helpful then in this course of therapy? So the exposures have obviously been useful. Has there been any other particular strategies that you've learned that you want to share with people?
Dealing with anxiety. Body dysmorphia causes me a lot of anxiety. I use... I run. I actually use running as sort of like a meditation. So I'll run in the morning. Running is almost like it's my time alone with the world, and I get very lost in music. And I get very emotional and fixated on a song. And that seems to really help me. Breathing. So for example, if I'm out and I feel like it's just too much, I literally just stop. And then all I do in my head, I normally just look at my feet. So I look at the ground and I'll say my name. If I can remember the date, I say the date and I say the time and I say you're alive and everything's okay, because it brings me into the present moment. Because when you're having this anxiety, you're going, and I just need to bring myself, and I remind myself that nobody's looking at me. Everything's okay. The other thing I might do is I might phone a friend and I'll say to them, can you just talk to me for 5 minutes? And I get them to ask me, what am I doing? What can I see? What can I smell? And again, that all calms the anxiety and it takes the focus off my body or whatever I think I'm looking at. The biggest thing for me is the support groups. Meeting people with body dysmorphia is brilliant. We laugh, we cry, we're there for each other. They understand my language. So I could pick up the phone to any of them and say, this is happening, and they get it. If you talk to someone who doesn't have it, they don't understand. And then what that does is it frustrated me, even sort of trying to explain it to my parents and some of my friends, because they don't get it. And I used to expect them just to be able to get it. And what I understand now is they don't. I can explain it in a sort of simple terms, or if they want to ask me about it. But when I need help, I go to someone with body dysmorphia. They can't solve the problem, but they would know the right thing to say. And the foundation, the groups have just been phenomenal. Absolutely. The support. I've met so many lovely people that generally care and will, check up on you. And if they hear you've had, there was one session I was particularly upset. And after the session, I had all these people texting me saying, Becca, it's okay. Everyone's here for you. And you just feel loved. I think with any mental health illness, support with people who have it helps. Because again, you do feel like you are the only person in the world.
Was it a big step though to go?
It took me a long time before I ever went to the Priory. But with the one I'm doing at the moment, it's a Zoom group. So some people turn their cameras off. So I actually think going forward, it is a good thing to do, because what it can do is I think gradually these people can get more and more confident. When you go and walk into a room, immediately what you're going to think is, everyone's going to be beautiful. I'm going to be so ugly. So you don't go. Whereas with the Zoom groups, you can have your camera off. You can hear us all talking. You can hear, the different stages of recovery. And then my hope is eventually one day those people will turn their cameras on because they will feel brave enough.
What would you say then to somebody who's thinking, I still can't even go, even if I switch my camera off, I'm too terrified? What would you tell them? What's the real kind of value, do you think, the reason for the reason?
Because you deserve a life. BDD is a debilitating, evil condition. It's, as far as I'm concerned, from something I've experienced, one of the most painful, horrible illnesses. But what I would like people to know is you can get better. And I'm proof of that. Everybody else on your podcast is proof of that. You'll meet people in the foundation who are proof of that. And your head is going to tell you, you will never be able to do it. But you can. You just have to be brave. Even if you reach out and want to just have a chat with someone. I mean, you could phone the foundation and they would put you in contact with someone. Because again, it is very nerve-wracking, the whole exposure, because it is about what you look like. But BDD is a condition. So if you're experiencing any of these symptoms that, you've heard me or other people discuss, the chances are you might have it. And you have to really try and find a way of, I guess, getting diagnosed and then having the treatment, because you're worth it. Because life is worth it. I never used to think life was worth living. And now I have better days than I have worse days. And instead of saying I have a bad day, what I say now is I've had a really bad moment. So I've had a bad 10 minutes, put it to the side, get up, get on with my day. Whereas before it was just bad day, bad day, bad day, bad day. Try and look at your day and think, what did I do today that was good? What did I do for myself that was good? What little step did I do? Don't try and run before you can walk. It's the really small things, that will get you there.
That's great advice, and it's very consistent as well. It's so interesting how
it is.
Everybody says the same thing about baby steps.
Yes.
With everyone I've spoken to. It's obviously really important.
Yeah. You can't get, but you can't. Even as I said, if you think about it like a baby learning to walk, they don't just stand up. They push, they stumble, they fall over. It's the same thing, but then you will get there. And you still can fall over. As an adult, we fall over, but we just get back up. And that's what we do. And you just have to persist with it and believe you are worthy of something.
You talked about how you're quite a strong person. Do you think you were that innately a strong person, or do you think your experiences have helped make you stronger?
Something has always been inside me that said to me, one day you are going to be able to fight this. I have always believed that, but it's definitely made me tougher, and it's made me realise what is important in life and not to take life for granted, and to appreciate what I have. And sometimes even to appreciate the fact that I have a body and I can walk, because this is the other thing. I'm so critical of myself. And sometimes I think, do you know what? Some people don't even have arms and legs. And I know that's very easy to say, but I try and sort of bring it all into relevance, that actually I've been given a body. I've got to stop hurting myself and keep being strong. But any kind of experience you go through like this, it only makes you stronger. So kind of in a way, am I grateful? Maybe I am, because someone who's gone through life and has had nothing to deal with sort of sails through life. I actually know what it feels like to be suicidal. So I know what it feels like to be on the point where you just want to die. And then I know what it feels like to be alive. And I think I'm actually grateful I've had those two things, because knowing where I was and now where I can be, the world can seem like an amazing place.
And you also have the power then to understand the whole spectrum of human experience, don't you? Because you've been in really dark places and you've been in really good places.
And you can only see, it's only through having those dark experiences that you can really appreciate the good stuff. And when you get the good stuff, it's amazing because of the darkness. So that's great.
What are you hoping for now, would you say, for yourself?
I would love to have a relationship. I've never had a successful relationship. That is something that, again, is going to take time, because I think it will have to be talked about fairly early on. But because I feel stronger about it now, I feel like if I met someone and I told them about it and they didn't want to be with me, that's fine. They don't have to. I wouldn't be right. Well, it must be because of what I look like. I need to be with someone who's going, not to have a complete understanding, but someone who is going to understand when I say, look, I can't do that. They're not going to have a go at me and pressure me to do things. So definitely having a partner. Children, I'm not sure about that one. But, continuing my career and just trying to be happy is one of my biggest things. I was always searching for happiness, I suppose, through external things. I always wanted to buy things, or I thought if I had straight teeth or better hair or slimmer thighs. I actually realise now that's not true. I mean, I used to research if I could have my hips chiseled down, which is something obviously you can't do. I mean, you're talking about cutting your bone off. But I used to phone doctors to try and find these things because I believed that would make me happy. But all I know is that whatever you do to yourself, the BDD will move. The people I've spoken to, and they said, then where does it stop? So you go to your nose, you do your teeth, you do your ears, and again, it can become an addictive cycle.
If you could go back now and talk to yourself as a young person when you just were first starting to get these experiences that shaped your life and started your BDD off, what do you think you would say to that little girl or 12-year-old or 13-year-old?
Be strong. I mean, I guess don't allow people to speak badly to you. Like, stick up for yourself, be who you want to be. It's a very difficult age, but I think I would just say to myself that, don't allow people to dictate to you. Do what you want to do, be who you want to be, and be proud of who you are. Be proud of what you look like. We all look different, and we're all beautiful in our own way, whatever colour skin or, our noses or our ears or whatever we look like. Just be proud of who you are, and don't listen to the people that want to put you down, because actually they're the insecure ones with the problems. You just need to stay strong in yourself.
Very true, very true.
Yeah.
And you've given actually quite a lot of really good advice already for people who might be suffering with BDD. But are there any final thoughts you would want to leave people with?
I would tell them to talk to someone about it. Be prepared that person may not understand what you're saying. So this is where I think the best place to go perhaps could be the foundation, because the foundation actually does a printout, I think, that you can take to your GP.
Oh, perfect.
Which is very useful. So rather than you going in there and, I'm not very good at explaining things. If I've got it written down, I think that's one of the things they suggest. So I would say get in contact, get the information, maybe read about it on the internet, and then go to your GP about it and see, because obviously it can be treated with medication and CBT, and then, start the process from there.
Brilliant. Thank you so much,
You're
Rebecca.
very welcome.
It's really great to talk to you.
Thank you so
Cheers.
much.
Thanks very much again to Rebecca for sharing her BDD experience, and I wish her lots of luck for her exciting new chapter. To hear more episodes, just search for Beating BDD on major podcast apps and Spotify. You can also leave us feedback and find out when new episodes are out by following the BDD Foundation on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube and Facebook. I'll be back with another interview soon. In the meantime, please remember that this podcast isn't therapy, so do seek help from a trained professional. Thanks for listening.